Hey all, welcome back. In this section, we're going to be taking a look at another essential chart type, line charts. Line charts are great for showing trends or changes over time for one variable or more variables or by groups. And they're a great way to see if a level of some quantitative variable, like sales or profit, is growing or declining over time and whether or not it shows some seasonal fluctuations. On a line chart, usually the x-axis is going to have some time variable. In this case, we've got quarters from 2021 to 2024. And on the y-axis, we have sales in dollars. Each point along the chart gives us the dollar value of sales for the corresponding time period, and the lines connect them to allow us to see kind of a continual movement. Something that's a little bit easier to follow than maybe bar charts would be. So line charts, changes over time. I'm going to walk you through what we're going to do. We're going to look at plotting the value of one variable over time, in this case, sales. We'll take some time to format our axes, and then once we get our first graph looking like we want it, we'll duplicate it to do a couple other things. We'll break down sales by region, and we'll do that in two ways. The first, what we see here is we've got region and detail and color. And so we've got all of the regions shown at the same time, and we can look at the colors and track the sales performance by region over time. The other way we're going to do this is by giving each region its own row. And here you'll see that we've got region on the rows shelf before sales. With region in color, we can then see how the sales patterns trend upward and downward by region without having them be busy. However, it's a little bit harder to see how they compare to one another. So there's pros and cons of each strategy. Next, we'll go to plotting two values at the same time, namely sales and profit. Sales, typically we're going to expect to be higher than profit. I mean, of course, profit is our sales net of all of our expenses. And in this case, we can see not only the large gap between sales and profit, but we can really see the fluctuation in sales. The downside is that profit looks relatively like a straight line because we have to put it on this really big axis in order to show sales. So the other thing we can do, rather than having this uniform axis where we're both plotting them both on one axis, we can use a dual axis chart where the Y value for profit is shown over here, and profit is this blue line measured between $0 and $40,000 per quarter. And sales is tracked on this axis on the left-hand side with values ranging between 0 and 300,000. So while it's not as intuitively quick to see how much lower profit is than sales, what we can see much better is the way sales and profits track one another. So depending on the story you're trying to tell or the point that you're trying to make, breaking down sales or profits or how you're going to pull regions and separate them from one another, you might choose a different strategy. But either way, the line chart is a great tool for helping you show and track changes over time of any quantitative variable. Okay, let's get started with line charts. I am going to close this file and open Tableau Public again. And where we're going to start is with our Superstore, sample Superstore data set. I have mine stored in my data file. Hopefully you know where yours is stored. You can always re-download it from class files on Canvas. And I'm going to place orders into the data source, and we've played with this enough before that I won't spend too much time explaining it. But let's pop over into sheet 1. So in sheet 1, what I want to do is take a look at sales by quarter. So in my column shelf, I'm going to want my date, and we'll use order date as our measure of date here. And then I'm going to take sales as my quantitative variable and drag it into rows. Dates in Tableau use what's called a hierarchy. And you know it's got a hierarchy because there's a plus in this corner. So if I click on that plus, I now get quarters. If I click on that plus, I now get months. And if I click on this plus, it'll take me to days and even weeks and hours of the day if I have that kind of data. What I would like to see for this chart, I'm going to drag all these things out again. If we know what we're looking for, we don't have to use this plus. We can, from the drop-down menu, select down for a continuous chart. I can look at quarters and years, and that's what I want to look at right now. So now we've got a graph that shows quarterly sales, and that was pretty straightforward. There's a couple formatting things I'd like to show you. First, I want to work on dealing with the axis. This quarter of order date is not really necessary because we've got quarters here. Most of the time when we've got a line chart, the x-axis is self-explanatory. So if I click and then right-click and then select Edit Axis, I'm going to do two things here. First, I'm going to remove the axis title. We don't need it. And the second thing I want to do is I want to make sure that the range that we're using, here it's starting October 22nd of 2020. We don't have any data there. So we're always going to get kind of this blank spot before the data starts. I want to get rid of that. And I know that this data set begins on January 1st of 2021. And I know that it ends on December 31st, 2024. I'm going to make this adjustment here. Let's take a look in tick marks and see what we can do. Let's take our major tick marks and fix them so that our interval is at every 1 quarter. Now we're going to have a label for every quarter. This looks a little crowded, so let's right-click and select Format. For format, we have some options, default, scale, or title, but we're going to choose scale. And under alignment, we're going to select down. It's a little crowded, but I'm going to drag that up to give myself a little bit more room. And now we see our year and our quarter, 2021 quarter 1, all the way through to 2024 quarter 4. Since I like this, we're only going to have to do it once because we'll duplicate this to move forward. Now this one, I would call it done, save for the title. And one other thing I want to show you. Since line charts place a line between connected known data points, it can be helpful to have little marks like a square or a circle so that you can see where the actual data point is, where the real value is, as opposed to just the line connecting data values. You can do it by hovering, because the tooltip is so useful. But under the color option in the marks card, you can choose a marker. And there you go. Now we've got it. Sales over time, and let's just give this sheet a good label. And rather than trying to have the sheet name as my label, I'm just going to call this quarterly sales 2000, no worries, someone coming in my office, 2021 to 2024. I'm not restarting the video for that. Quarterly sales. There we go. I'm going to call that good. So we can look at, and let's just call this sales, Q sales, and we'll leave it. Okay. Now, last time we looked at this data, we were trying to see how sales and profits varied by region and across product category. And so let's just for a moment think about how sales vary by region. We won't make it too complicated, but now that we've got all this formatting done, I don't want to lose it. Let's duplicate this tab. And now we've got quarterly sales 2. But this time, let's break it down by region. And we've really got 2 choices. We probably have more than 2 choices, but 2 that we're going to talk about today. And for the first, it'll mirror kind of what we've worked on before. If we want to know sales by region, we can just take region and drag it into detail, right? Like with scatter plots, whatever you put into detail, you get a separate one of those for each item in the detail. So a separate dot per model of shoes, and in this example, a separate line by region. This is not particularly easy to follow, but we can rely on color, and we can put region in color also. And now we've got quarterly sales for each region. And there's quite a bit of information here, although it is busy, right? We can tell because they're all on the same axis that the values are fairly similar, and that in some quarters, the eastern region is the highest, but in others, it's going to be the western quarter. We can also see that here in quarter 4 of 2023, central region, eastern region, and southern region, central, east, and west were all very, very comparable. So we can see exactly how each line compares to all the other lines, how the sales in each region directly compare. Although it is a little bit harder to pull out or notice the patterns for any one region. So this brings me to our second method for looking at regional differences. Because I like my formatting, I'm just going to duplicate this. It's going to become quarterly sales number 3. And I'm going to take region out of detail and out of color. And instead, I want a row showing quarterly sales for each region. So here's my sales, and here's each quarter. And I'm going to take region and place it in front of sales on the rows shelf. Now we've got a row for each region. This says quarterly sales, and region is pretty self-evident, so I'm going to hide field labels for rows. And then here for the axis, just like we did when we were looking at the dates, we can just remove sales. And now we've got quarterly sales. And did you catch me that I didn't fix my title? Can we pause for a second and go back? Let's take a look at quarterly sales number 2, but we're going to call this quarterly sales by region, 2021 to 2024. We're going to do the same thing here, quarterly sales by region, 2021 to 2024. Even though these are all labeled, let's take region and place it in color anyway. And now we're sort of establishing a theme. Central's dark blue, east is orange, south is red, and west is turquoise. And that's carried across both of these. So we can use a line chart to look at one metric as a whole, or we can break it out and look at it by some other dimension. In this case, region. We could do the same thing for a product category or how something was shipped. We have options. We know from before we've looked at sales and profit. And so I want to take this opportunity to look over time using a line chart at both sales and profit. We're going to duplicate our first sales tab because it's the closest one to what I want to look at, and I'm going to drag it over to the edge, and I'm going to call it Q sales and profit. And this is going to become quarterly sales and profit 2021 to 2024. So I'd like to get profit on here also. So let's take profit, our second measure, and let's just place it on the row shelf next to sales. Tableau defaults to giving us the 2 rows, just like we have here, where we have each region on a row. In this case, we've got sum and profit each on a row. But I don't want them on separate rows. I really want them all in one chart. So the way we do this is we take profit and we drag that profit pill over onto the axis with sales. And we're essentially telling Tableau to put both of these in the same view. And they do. We have profit in blue and sales in orange now. Sales should probably be placed before profit because that's how they appear on the income statement. So let's do it, sales above profit. And now we can see the big gap between our dollars of sales and the amount of profit that we keep. By using a single axis between 0 and 300,000, we can really see that there's a vast difference. However, because we've put profit on this really large scale, the quarterly fluctuations, like we see here, Q4 is our peak in every year. It becomes really hard to see that because it's gotten so smoothed out. What it does for us, though, is show the big gap between sales and profit. Depending on the story we're trying to tell, this might be a great graph. However, there's another way to look at this where instead of having one uniform axis, we have two axes, and that's called a dual axis graph. So let's duplicate this. We're going to call it quarterly sales and profit. Number 2, that's fine. But we might have to just sort of start over here. But we want to keep all the formatting so it's not a loss. Don't despair. Let's take sales. We'll take profit. But now, from that drop down from profit, we're going to select dual axis. When we click on dual axis, we now have profit and sales on the same graph. However, the axes are different. Profit in blue I want sales first. Pardon me while I mess with this. Oh, is it going to work? It will. I promise. I'm not restarting the video. I'm going to just freestyle Tableau here. Sales. Profit. Dual axis. Okay, sales on top and then profit. Sales is orange, profit is blue. Sales is orange, profit is blue. Okay. So profit, our blue line here, is measured on a scale from 0 to 40,000. Sales in orange is measured on a scale of 0 to 300,000. While it doesn't give us that immediate impact that we have here, that sales is so much greater than profit, what it does show us is that sales and profit track each other through the seasonal fluctuations fairly, if not extremely reliably. And that is a complementary, albeit slightly different story. And so when choosing between visualizations, the one we choose depends a little bit on the story that we're trying to tell, and we want to make sure that we've got enough explanation that allows our intended audience to kind of know where we're going. Okay, that is 3 line charts, 4 line, how many of that I can't even count. Sales, sales by region with regions in rows, sales and profit on a single axis, and sales and profit on a dual axis. So that is a lot of line charting. Have fun. Let me know if you have any questions.